And it appears we are recording. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, hockey fans, welcome to what we're going to semi-officially refer to as the Buffalo Junior Sabres Press Box Party. Hello, everybody. I am Michael Mroziak. I'm one half of the broadcast team. Jeff Boyd is here, as are Ryan and Melissa Burgess, our public address and our social media director, respectively. And folks, we got the word Friday. The OJHL, if and when they're able to get their season going, we're not going to be a part of it. As long as the border remains closed, it makes no sense for us to even try and think about it. So we are officially sitting out this season.
Yeah, it felt like it was becoming a when and not an if as this crazy year continues to roll itself on. Not anything any of us wanted to read, but I'd be hard-pressed to think of a better way for the league to be able to continue. At least every other team being up there in Ontario makes it much easier for them to all be held to the same regulations, not have to travel across international borders. Plus, things seem to be handled a little bit better up there more than they are down here. Not that New York is a particular hotbed, but no. Everyone around us is. So certainly regrettable, but I think it was unavoidable, unfortunately, once we got into the summer and it didn't seem like there was an end in sight.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned New York State, because among the words that we've gotten back from some of our peers, Alan Corkum from the Georgetown Raiders play-by-play said, New York's done a good job keeping the numbers down, but unfortunately it's the rest of the country that's not the case, and it made Friday's decision inevitable.
Yeah, and it's players who play from not just New York. There's a lot of native Western New Yorkers, of course, but you have players who have always come down from Ontario. I mean, over the last couple of years, we've had players from Minnesota, from Ohio, from all over the place. And just the logistics of having a player, think of all the Southern Ontario boys you've had the last couple of years. You have to come down here to practice and then go home. Come down here to play your games and go home. And just some of these players will be making multiple crossings a week, and I have a hard time seeing how that's possible in the current climate where you can't just cross the border like you could have a year ago.
And the biggest name among ours, we had Michael Craig from across the border, Matty Costantini from across the border. And in the case of Costantini, here's where it gets interesting. The Junior Sabres, by making their decision when they did, Nick Tuzzolino, our GM, says, well, this will also allow the team to help work with the players and disperse them so that, the guys can, hopefully hook up with another situation. Craig and Costantini, they stay on that side of the border. I mean, what do you guys think the odds are, or maybe the timeline for when one of the other teams in the OJ scoops them up?
I mean, it's interesting now because Costantini and Craig both were in a situation where they were going to be playing at a whole different level this year. I mean, Costantini was one of the top players in the OJHL last season once that light bulb went off in his head about a month into the season. And he was destined for greater things. But, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see because there's every other team in the OJHL would love to add that guy to their roster if he decides that he wants to stay in his home province and just play another year in the OJHL. I mean, this is a kid who is a NHL draft prospect at this point, not just on the outside looking in, but could certainly even continue to improve his draft stock here in whatever version of a 2021 season there may or may not exist here coming up in the next couple of months. That would be a big weapon for any other team to add if he decides he wants to come back to the OJHL. Now, I don't know what the semantics are with adding players who are technically on the Junior Sabres roster, but not this year. So I'm sure the league will have to sort some of that out, because I would imagine there are at least a couple of Junior Sabres players who will play somewhere, whether it's the OJHL or not. But I would like to think that if the league is officially recognizing this as a unique situation, that maybe there can be caveats put in place for these guys to play 1 year with whoever else in the league.
And Ryan, you got the call from Nick on Friday morning that this was going to be happening. And it seems, you and I traded text messages, Ryan, and it seemed like, maybe there's a chance, maybe we can at least keep most of the boys together, do some exhibitions against some other American junior teams that are in the same boat. But you got the indication that, yes, indeed, the idea is just to send these guys on their way and see if they can take the chances and hook up with teams elsewhere.
Yeah, that's essentially what I read from the press release that we sent out as well through the league. The league, of course, is going to work with us over the next several weeks to try to find as many of our guys a place to play where they're going to be able to continue their development and, most importantly, be safe while doing it. We had several of our players. I don't know if Jeff or Mike or Melissa, I don't know how many of y'all saw this, but we had 4 or 5 kids go in the NAHL draft, including Colby Seitz, Luke Pavicic. So it is entirely feasible that those guys that were drafted could find a place to play in a comparable junior hockey league based in the United States this year. Beyond that, like we were talking about, guys like Matteo Costantini and especially Matteo are going to have to weigh their development with a place in the USHL over remaining in Ontario and remaining where it's a lot safer than one of the 30-plus states that if you or I went to, for example, like Iowa, we'd have to quarantine for 2 weeks upon coming back to New York. So there's definitely a lot to be weighed.
And Melissa, you, over the course of the season, follow these players and watch them grow. And you've seen, like Ryan mentioned, some of these guys are now entering for NHL consideration. And Matteo, he's a very serious consideration, Melissa.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, I was not expecting us to get Matteo back. I don't think any of us were. I think we kind of knew that he was, to put it nicely, too good for us. And, he had a lot of folks watching him. So I think we kind of knew that he wasn't going to be back. But it is interesting to think how the status of things now changes things for him because, if he was thinking of playing college hockey in the U.S., what does that look like now? I don't know. And then you also have to feel for those guys who, would be playing their last U20 season. And now who knows where they're going to end up this season.
Well, hopefully a lot of our guys that are in their final year of eligibility would ultimately get a chance to hook up elsewhere. Obviously, with the exception of Michael and Matteo, hook up somewhere on this side of the border. It's got to be tough for Tuz because you're effectively breaking up the team for the benefit of the players. And when presuming we come back next year, he's going to be rebuilding a team from scratch.
I mean, it's not too much different than what he had to do when he really took the reins as the GM. There was a lot of changeover over the course of the last couple seasons. So certainly not an enviable task, but think of where this team was at the beginning of last year with basically no preseason and almost no returning players. So I'm not saying it's easy. It certainly isn't. But this is not a task that he hasn't undertaken before. So if anyone can do it in the league at this point, I think he might be the most equipped to just kind of find guys and make a team work. Because at this point, I think it's more about the ownership and the management and the coaching than it is about every individual player. It just seems like a really good, well put together locker room. And I got that impression just being around the players and being around the locker room itself. I think there will be players who come back. There will be players who we didn't even realize we were calling the last Junior Sabres game, which is the worst part of it all, is how many names you're going to see that when they skated off the ice after winning a game to never skate on that ice again. But there will be a lot of new faces who come in. Eventually, there will be hockey again, and I think the team will find a way through.
Well, if there's any consolation, we can say that, we will come in whenever we do get to play OJHL hockey again. We will be coming in on a win streak. Our last game before going into hiatus, we got to win. So we got that going for us.
Yes, a 1.5 year long win streak. Alluding to Jeff's point, I just pulled up our roster from last year, and with this news, my heart goes out to guys like Jeremy Swartz, Josh Dressler, Andy Clouden, Chandler Kujawa, who's a big part of the blue line, Ethan Liestos, Book Terry. Those are all the 2000 birth years that are going to have to find another place to play this year.
I wonder if the league will consider some sort of extenuating circumstance waiver on some of these guys if they maybe get to hold a little extra eligibility. I don't know what the logistics of that would be, but I wonder if 2021 rolls around and some of those guys don't get a chance to play some more, even though technically, I mean, it's like maybe like redshirting a player in college, something like that. If they don't end up playing somewhere this year, of course, that would probably not work if they end up playing for a different team this year. But a lot of Native Americans and Bo from Ohio, a lot of those other guys from right here in Western New York. So who knows the logistics of those guys even trying to go play at this level of hockey because they can't get across the border the same way the four of us can. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. I know that the release went out for their plans for the season, but I know the league still has a lot of work they're going to have to do to figure out what the easiest way is to do this, both for the best of the players and also for the best of the league, which is not an easy set of circumstances to navigate. They're not the first league to have to do it. They unfortunately probably won't be the last, but I think so far done about as much as they can in handling this. So I was pretty impressed by what they laid out on Friday in terms of how they plan on doing everything this year.
And the press release when the league and Larry Playfair, our team governor, made the announcements that we were certainly going to be taking the hiatus, they made clear we remain a franchise in good standing. And I think that was important to hear, that we have to take a year off, because sometimes when you get a franchise that takes a year off, that's kind of the slippery slope, and then the team just does not come back. But I think this is a different circumstance. A lot of times if they go on a hiatus, it's for some sort of financial reason. And I think the league is recognizing that this really is a circumstance beyond our control.
Yeah, I mean, it's those three words, in good standing. Usually don't hear those words attached to a press release like that where this team or league is no longer existing. But I mean, there's nothing that Larry or Tuz or anyone could have done to have mitigated or prevented this. And I know we talked to Tuz and Tim Kennedy a couple months ago. Now, I have no concept of time anymore this year. Whenever that was that we had the two of them on one of these Zoom meetings, and we talked back in the late spring that they were already having to navigate a lot of the difficulties of trying to recruit players across a border they can't get across, and watch scouting when these guys aren't playing games. And eventually, even if they were able to play this season, you had to wonder how much the deck was already stacked against them because of what they wouldn't have been able to do. It's going to be a different hockey season for a lot of reasons. And I think there's going to be a lot of teams that are in that same kind of boat where the first month of the season, I bet there's some really flat teams. Kind of like we were last season. Honestly, we came out of the gate and just got stopped for a month because we barely had a preseason and a lot of new guys on the team. But I bet you this year, a lot of the teams are going to deal with the same kind of thing because they're not going to have a lot of practices. They haven't been playing their normal leagues probably until just recently. I know some leagues down here just started playing beer league and casual hockey again for the first time. So these kids who have probably been playing hockey 5 days a week since they were God knows how young, and for the first time in their lives, they take a couple months off rather suddenly. So it'll be interesting to see how that impacts everyone. It would have impacted Buffalo maybe a little bit more, but that's not to say that the other teams in the league aren't dealing with a lot of the same kind of issues because of you can't just go down to your local rink and sit up there with your notebook and watch these kids play the way you could have back in January.
Mm-hmm. That begs a question, Ryan, Melissa, or Jeff to answer. Is how much tougher does this make the scouting mission? Also, what does this do for the Junior Sabres players in divisions beneath the U20? I don't know what their future plans are for this season. Most of them they stay on this side of the border, but what does that do as far as what players we can look at for the 21-22 season, and how much tougher it's going to make for Nick and for TK to do the scouting?
Well, I think we're going to find out. We're going to experiencing the same thing the NHL Sabres are with video scouting really making its return to things. We're going to Tuz and Tim are going to have to just watch as much film as they can, and I think they're going to be burning up their cell phone lines, calling these coaches and just asking them, what kind of guy is this? How is he in the room? I know that's Nick's first question because, as we've seen over the past couple of years, Nick Tuzzolino knows how to build a tight locker room. That's his philosophy, and it's one that has worked out very well. What can he do on the ice, yes, but also what kind of guy is he in the room? So I have a feeling the cell towers are going to be burning. As far as the teams underneath us, the 18Us, the 16Us, our feeder system really, I believe it was last season they left the Tier 1 elite setup and they created, in partnership with 6 or 7 other teams, a separate league called the Northeast Pack. And based on our pandemic and how the states in the Northeast have successfully began to combat this and at least give our doctors some type of work, I think that they will be able to play it in some capacity. And that will do nothing but good for the guys playing 16s, 18s, so that when we hit the ice again, they'll be ready.
Yeah, I mean, my first thought was Quebec and the Pee Wee tournament. Like, that's pretty much off the table at this point. So you feel for those kids at that level, and what does that mean for their season and how things progress? I don't know. But also, you just think, like, in general, there's so many practices that have to be taken into consideration. Like, Ryan and I were watching a video the other day from the Northtown Center. Obviously, it's a different rink, but you have to think kind of Harbor Center would go with the same practices where it's players enter through a certain door and players exit through a certain door, and there's no locker rooms open at all, and players have to come dressed, with just their skates and their helmet in hand and all this stuff. And so you have to think, like, if all that is in place or similar things at Harbor Center, how much more difficult does that make it for teams to have practices, let alone games?
And that's the other thing. We don't know when Harbor Center is going to reopen. I've heard nothing from my contacts there. I know 716, the restaurant, is scheduled to reopen in the fall. When exactly that is, I don't know. But no telling when the Junior Sabres will have access to their facilities again.
Yeah, not to shift the conversation away a little bit from that, but they also let go of a lot, not the Junior Sabres, but the Pagulas let go of a lot of the staff who work at the rink and at the concession stand and at the restaurant. So it's not just easy as flicking a switch and saying, let's go. They have to basically reacquire or re-sign basically an entire staff for that building. So they're going to have to plan this out a good bit in advance because they don't have people necessarily sitting around waiting for a phone call to go back to work. They kind of cleared that entire bank of people out for the most part.
That's an excellent point. They have to really rebuild their personnel. And full disclosure, with Harbor Center not being reopened, I'm signed up to participate in the 11-day power play, and instead of Harbor Center, it's going to be moved over to Riverworks, just a few blocks away. It's going to be a street hockey event. But yeah, as long as Harbor Center was remaining closed, even if the Canadian border was to open tomorrow, that still puts us, the Junior Sabres franchise, behind in preparations because our own ice surfaces would not be ready to go in downtown Buffalo.
Yeah, and I would imagine they're going to have to probably plan this a good month or so ahead of time to actually get the people and then get the ice properly set up and taken care of, because I would imagine there hasn't been someone going in every day and doing, this is a surface that is tended to and resurfaced. There's people on the ice before we come in for a game, and there are people on the ice after we leave. That ice surface is in use as many hours of the day as you could possibly hope that your local rink is being used. And it's gone from all of that to zero in the blink of an eye. So I would imagine it's going to be a lot of just maintenance and making sure everything is in working order once they get everyone back there. So I would imagine that you're going to hear of Harbor Center's planned opening at least a month. And since we're here on the 2nd of August, we haven't heard this. That means that it's at least middle to end of September if they decided tomorrow that they wanted to do it. And by that point, you're already into the regular season of the OJHL, which I would imagine was one of the considerations for the announcement coming when it did, because like you said, Mike, even if they opened the border tomorrow and things got better, it's not just opening the floodgates, flicking a switch and letting everyone go back to normal here. There's going to be a lot of things that have to take place first.
And even the ice facilities that are open right now, there's restrictions as to what you can and cannot do on the ice. Northtown Center at Amherst, my hometown rink, they're allowing no more than 25 people on the ice in a single session. And these are private rental sessions. No more than 25 people. That includes your coaches and your trainers. No actual hockey scenarios. It's shooting drills. It's skating drills. It's the kind of skating designed to help keep your players separated and distanced while still getting their hockey workouts in. But there's no throwing a puck in the corner and sending two guys in there to dig for it. They're trying to minimize how much and how close the contact still is on the ice.
Yeah, and that's going to be another big part of it too, is when everyone is allowed to go back on the ice and resume and quote unquote normal hockey activities. These are a lot of cases in the OJHL. These are incredible athletes. They're way better hockey players than I ever have been, and I ever will be. But there's going to be a lot more work that goes into getting ready for the next season than they've probably ever had to go through in their life, because they've, like I said, running and skating is great, but just being able to skate fast does not prepare you in entirety for a hockey game. So it's going to be interesting to see how it affects the sport itself when they first return, and how long it takes some people to get back to the peak that they were at before all of this.
Now, I had heard one potential avenue the OJHL has to kind of reduce the distancing is less people on the ice. I heard a rumor saying they might try 4-on-4 this year for regular play. If that's the case, get your popcorn out and make sure it's hot and buttered, because that is going to be some fantastic hockey once everybody gets out of the flat spot.
I think that's an interesting thought, but in some sense it kind of doesn't make sense to me, because then you're going to have more players on the bench, which are more closer together. And, to me, there would be more potential for spread of things if you're closer together like that than if you're on the ice. But I guess,
unless they reduce the roster size.
Oh, they could do that too.
Have a few more healthy scratches in a given game, maybe.
It'd be like that Buffalo Lindsay game all over again, but full time.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
2 coaches on the bench.
Yeah. Before we go any further, we did call this a pity party. We haven't had our first toast yet. So I miss you guys.
Here's to y'all.
Yes.
I miss you guys.
It's the longest I've gone without calling a professional sporting event, and I can't even tell you how long. It feels weird because there was no end of the season. There was no Atlantic Hockey Playoffs. There was no FC Buffalo this summer. So I'm just sitting around. My voice is going to be in such great shape by the time we get back to the rink for the first time. It's just been rested, just waiting. So I can't wait to be back at a rink with all of you.
Jeff, I'm really surprised they did not ask you to even come down to Erie for that NPSL Members Cup stuff, because I watched some of those streams and, oh.
Yeah, I watched them too. Yeah, Jeff, they could have used you. I speak seriously. They really could have used you down there.
It was bad.
I'm always available. It's tough sometimes. I'm trying as much as I'm willing to do it, and I would go down there and do it if they asked me to. I'm not gonna be the guy asking Nick to do it right now, because I'm not trying to keep myself as insulated and away from everything as possible. Not that going to an empty soccer stadium an hour away from here is gonna change too much about that, but
it wasn't empty. They had fans.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, not all of them, but they limited attendance. But
so even down in that's what makes part of having an American team in a Canadian league now probably so untenable for the league, is Erie, Pennsylvania is not very far from where we are, and the rules of what you can do in Erie are entirely different than they are right here, because I'm sure that FC Buffalo couldn't have any fans right now because there's different mandates here in the state of New York. So it's a whole different thing, and you have to take into account that we've had players from, it wasn't that long ago, we had a player who was a native of California, and Nick Kent, who came and played for the team for last season. So imagine trying to
Tyler McNeil.
And Tyler
McNeil,
too,
that's
right now. Yeah. So you have all these players coming from all across the country. That's one of the things I think has made the Junior Sabres really good the last couple of years, is Tuz is finding these guys from different parts of the country who aren't being recruited by these Canadian teams at all. That's another card that would have been taken almost entirely out of his deck, is the ability to get a guy to come from 3,000 miles away to relocate to New York. I mean, it's probably difficult enough to be apart from your family during a hockey season like that as is, let alone when you can't go outside, you can't have other hobbies, you just kind of, I feel bad enough for these professionals in the bubble. I know they're making money, but they're away from their families. They can't go outside. They go to their hotel rooms, they eat meals, they go play hockey, and they stay inside and pray that no one brings the virus into them. I can't imagine what that would be like for these kids who are high schoolers being apart from their families, let alone these professionals making millions. These are high schoolers chasing the dream. I can't imagine that it'd be easy for anyone to sign up to play hockey across the country like that.
I got a 14-year-old daughter. She's not a hockey player, but she's a teenager who was isolated from her friends for weeks on end. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, it is not a good, healthy thing to keep a teenager isolated like that for an extended period of time.
Yeah, I mean, we're social beings by nature, as much as we might try to avoid it sometimes. So you don't realize how much it impacts you until you've been through those quarantine periods. And you're, as nice as it is to see all of you here on my screen in front of me, it is such a different. The connection is very much different than it is if you just like actually sit down next to someone. Even if you're not talking, it's physically being with someone is so different than talking to them on a Zoom meeting. I look forward to never being on a Zoom meeting ever again at some point.
That's Texas size for it, buddy.
I hear you there.
Yeah.
Now, you brought up Erie a few minutes ago, and now I'm really intrigued with our news that we are taking the season off. What does the OHL do? Because they've got Erie and they've got the teams in Michigan, and the WHL has a whole division in the Pacific Northwest. What do these teams do?
That becomes interesting because, they're going to run into the same situation. They're not going to give a junior level hockey team special consideration to reopen the border. I'm sorry, they're just not going to do that. You've got those OHL teams. You've got the Western League teams. As far as what they do out on the West Coast, I don't know, maybe they just keep that an interdivisional season, and then I don't know what they'll do for the postseason. But yeah, Erie Otters could be in the same fix as the Buffalo Junior Sabres. Right across town, the Buffalo Regals Junior B. I think it's not a question of if, it's when they have to pull out of the Golden Horseshoe division for the winter. It's just, it's inevitable. They're going to have to do that. It's just a matter of when they finally say, yeah. So
I did see that.
Good question. What happens to all those other junior teams that have to cross the border?
That's true. Now, I did see that the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League announced their plans. October 1st, 60-game season. The teams that are in maritime provinces and not in Quebec will play each other in those provinces. Nobody will cross that border into Quebec.
Wow.
But then what happens when you get to the postseason?
Quebec champion, Maritimes champion, and find some place for those two teams to play.
Yeah.
The other league I'm thinking of, which could get interesting, is women's professional hockey. You now have a Toronto team that's set to enter the league this year. It's kind of a flip side, a singular Canadian professional team that can't cross into the United States, and that's the Toronto Six, of course. So interesting dynamic there too. Does this expansion franchise have to maybe wait it out a little bit longer, presuming the Buttes and all the other teams in the NWHL do finally get a season underway?
I'm gonna hold my tongue on this one because Michael, I actually spoke to your colleague earlier today about this same topic. So
full disclosure, my colleague being Nick Lippa over at WBFO Radio, my day job.
I also have a piece coming out about this for the Victory Press. So
all right,
I am on top of it.
Well, we won't spoil it for you and give it away too soon. But that thought crossed my mind too. Is the Buttes are signing players, but you got the Toronto Six that's set to enter the league, and it's kind of the polar opposite. They're the only Canadian team, and are they going to be kind of marooned on that side of the bridge? So.
I'm envisioning a Blue Jays-esque situation where Ottawa will not allow them to play in Toronto. It looks like they were looking at Scotiabank on home of the Junior Canadiens for their home rink. Mm-hmm. I'd seen that story earlier this week, but if Ottawa tells the Six they can't play in Toronto, doubleheaders at Northtown Center. I'm seeing dollar signs, guys. I really am.
Sure, why not? No, seriously, why not? Why not play as a host city? Manny Cronin, their GM. She's familiar with Western New York, so she still has connections here. Maybe it makes it the logical choice where Toronto Six comes to Buffalo as home away from home, and hopefully they'll have. If it comes to that, hopefully that's an easy enough solution for them to work out. And yeah, it does bring some dollars down to this side of the border. I also hope that I'm paying attention to the Blue Jays, and I'm partly worried. As much as I love the thrill of them playing big league baseball here in Buffalo, I'm starting to wonder if that season's going to be in jeopardy before they even make it to Salem Field. And I hope that once we get into hockey season, that Toronto 6 does not run into that same issue.
I mean, the Jays were already supposed to have played a full series here that got canceled or rescheduled because they were going to play the Phillies, who had played the Marlins, who have 18 or 19 now cases.
Mm-hmm.
So who knows? The only sports that have so far been able to make this work have been sports that have been able to do the quote-unquote bubble, which is the NHL, which is on now, the NBA.
Major League Soccer.
Major League Soccer, the Premier Lacrosse League, the
WNBA.
WSL,
Mm-hmm. Yes,
WNBA.
Yeah.
So you've got all these leagues that have been able to do that. I think it's going to be difficult if that's the only way to make it work. I don't see how the NWHL can do it because these are players who have Monday to Friday jobs in almost all cases.
Yeah,
they can't just leave for X amount of time and go play a tournament style. It's going to be difficult enough for the NFL to probably pull that off if they decide that's the way to go. And God only knows if that's the way they're going to decide they want to go. Hopefully the MLB is a lack of success is going to maybe scare them straight a little bit, but we'll see. Hopefully when January rolls around and the NWHL has postponed proceedings of the season, at least until then, that things are in a better position. There's at least, if not vaccines, but maybe treatments, ways that people can feel a little more comfortable resuming some sort of normal activity. Predicting the future at this point is impossible. It's usually difficult, but not quite as difficult as it is in present time. So we will see how all of this leads. Hopefully there is a season for everyone. I feel like in a lot of cases, though, it's not going to be until this time next year.
Getting back to the OJHL and what sort of form of season they end up getting, it will be interesting to see how our division shakes out with Buffalo not in the mix. Actually, Ron Valentine, the columnist for the league, don't mean to put him on the spot here, but he had written this comment down somewhere, and I couldn't help but laugh. It says, does Burlington finally feel they can get out of the first round of the playoffs with Buffalo not playing this season? So, we salute you, Ron. Yeah, and thank you for all the kind words and support to us, Ron. But it's an interesting point because Buffalo's out of the mix. You got some teams in that division who now perhaps do have a better shot of changing the division dynamic. You've got other teams in the OJHL that don't have the American players they were counting on signing, and it'll be interesting to see how the OJHL shakes out over the course of the season. I do plan to pay attention, be it electronically, but I do plan to keep paying attention as the season goes.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just looking at things. I think the door is now wide open in the West Division for the Milton Menace to step in and make an impact. And the other thing is going to be interesting is Collingwood, or as I now like to call them, North Oakville. With
like
all the personnel that have made their way up to the shore of the lake there. That's going to be an interesting dynamic for sure. Lindsay has had several down years, but it sounds like they have a good team in place as far as the front office, and they're going to do their best to turn that team around. And, the Muskies have been a cornerstone of the league for decades. They've always been here.
Yeah. Whether it's good times or bad for the Muskies, those are one of those franchises I don't ever want to see go away for that reason. I mean, they're a staple. It's important to have like the Lindsay types in the OJHL as well. On your point about Collingwood Blues, the culture is shifting up there near the Georgian Bay, and they're going to be a tough team to watch this year, I think.
Yeah, going back to Burlington, I'll always think of Matt Hobbs and that last game of the season, which we didn't know was going to be our last game of the season, of course. But did we all see that he signed overseas?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. Good for him. Good for him, obviously.
That's good because he did verbally commit to a college, and then this European team came and made the offer. I mean, it's unfortunate. I mean, he'll be forever remembered in our playoff lore for, having that meltdown in the last game. But that should not be Matt Hobbs's full legacy, because he was also a very key giver to the Burlington community. He had some charity work that was going on up there. That's the kind of stuff he should be remembered for. It's unfortunate that in that one final game they had that meltdown, because that's not the Matt Hobbs who should be remembered, and that's not fair to him. And I think enough time will pass on where that will be forgotten, and they'll still remember him as a good player on the ice and a great guy in the community.
I wonder, too, if part of his decision might be that he's probably more likely to get an actual hockey season in Europe than he is to get one in Canada or in the States. By going over there, and even if he only plays a year, I don't pretend to know his thought process, but it might be the best chance for him to actually have a normal season and keep himself in top shape and keep his options open for the future as well.
That's a good point there, too.
Here's my other question regarding the upcoming OJHL season. So obviously, with us out of it, do they have a showcase? Because obviously you want to try to have showcase because scouting, and that's huge for all those players. But, they've had it in Buffalo the past few years. Obviously our setup is ideal for that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So do they move it somewhere else? Do they move it later into the year maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, because what you got to take into consideration is you're bringing in scouts and coaches from all over the U.S. and Canada, including some states that might be of COVID-related concern. So, the teams themselves might be healthy, but when you're bringing in personnel from all over the place, that's got to be something Marty Savoy's got to think hard about.
And just get, so many, all 20-plus teams in the league together for 3 days, I really don't think is tenable at this time. I have a feeling they'd call on 16 Mile in Oakville to host it, but I really don't think the Oakville and the town government there would be too keen on it. So they may postpone the showcase and not hold one until next season. Bring it back to Buffalo as a nice welcome back.
Maybe they break the showcases down into smaller showcases just among the divisions, or maybe two of them for each conference. Maybe
I could see that.
Put one of them in Coburg and then the other one in Oakville, maybe.
Yeah, I could see him more being of a hockey day in Canada kind of situation where everyone just plays one after the other, but from different locations. I would agree. It does seem kind of untenable to try to get 20 teams and personnel and scouts and everyone into one building. And I would imagine the restrictions that will apply to rinks in Canada too would make doing that basically impossible. Yeah. Because there's just not enough room physically to do all that. Even just picture how crazy showcase days were here. Mm-hmm. You had 4 teams at one time playing. You had other teams in the stands watching. You had scouts running around, coaches running around. There's just too many pieces that have to be in place to correctly pull off a multi-day kind of format like that in one location.
The whole point of the showcase is that it's supposed to be one-stop shopping for all those scouts,
On the right side of things, obviously it's not ideal in any sense for us to be sitting out this year, but I get it. And what we can all do, I think we have a fantastic opportunity before us as a franchise and as a staff. I don't pretend to be privy to know what kind of capital resources the team has. That's more a Larry Playfair thing and way up here. But I think we may have an opportunity with not playing this season, saving a little bit of money that we wouldn't otherwise be spending it on. We may be able to do some things to better our presentation, not only in the rink, but on hockey TV. I'm thinking new camera, some better broadcast equipment, things like that. We may have the opportunity to do that. And basically my message for anybody who happens to watch this is when you get going again, take it on. You're going to want to watch.
No, it's a good point. I mean, maybe this is just kind of a year for us to do some internal upgrades and things like that, and um, pay attention to the OJ, and whichever age divisions beneath us have the opportunity to play, kind of keep an eye on them and support them in one way or another, and just support the younger members of the Junior Sabres umbrella, because um, and more than that, maybe convince them to stay, because we do have a lot of very talented Junior Sabres players who end up leaving either for another junior league, or they head off to like a private school or something like that. That's one of the challenges maybe Nick's got, is to if he feels it's the right fit, do what he's got to do to convince them to stay.
Yeah, there's no easy answers to any of these questions, which is why we're here on a Sunday night talking about all of them. It's difficult to see where this all leads, but eventually, at some point, and God knows how long it'll be, things will settle down. They'll shake themselves out. We'll find out. I'm sure some things are going to be fine. Some things are going to be rough, but just like every other franchise that's in a similar situation, I trust the people in charge of the Junior Sabres organization to make things go as well as they can. I think that we could be in a much worse position than we are.
I agree.
No, I was just reading an article here just to kind of see where we are on maybe getting through this pandemic. I was looking at an article from the Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy from the University of Minnesota. Dr. Anthony Fauci, of course, our top infectious disease guy, appeared in front of Congress on Friday, which I believe was the 31st. Yes, it was. We're apparently going to have a U.S.-based vaccine ready by the first quarter of 2021. There's, of course, several worldwide that are in trials, both small-scale and large-scale clinical trials now. But really, that's a beacon of hope for everybody worldwide, certainly at us as well. If we get that vaccine and it starts working, then look out, here we come.
Mm-hmm. I certainly hope that that's the case, and I certainly hope that they can get it right. Given the time, I mean, it's sometimes it takes years to get the right vaccine for a certain virus, but there's a lot of pressure on those developing one to come up with it. And I just certainly hope that luck is on their side, and they are able to come up with a workable and functioning vaccine, an effective vaccine, in such a short frame of time. Because I mean, Americans are not necessarily known for their patience, and I know that we're holding our breath for this one. So here's hoping that and a tip of my cap to the all of those who are involved in trying to get that vaccine produced and ready for us. God bless you and good luck.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I just have any last tidbits to say here is, I think that we all know, sports aren't the priority right now. People are dying and people are being hospitalized and everything, and that vaccine will be a saving grace in a lot of ways for our country. And obviously, sports are a part of that, a small part.
Sports are good for the morale, but you're right. It shouldn't be the end all be all focus. Let's focus our support on those who are trying to get us to that vaccine, and give them the support, and hope they're able to come through.
It's the other thing. Sorry, Jeff. Go ahead.
No, you're good. And so ultimately, the four of us are lucky to be here, healthy, talking. There's so many people out there who have it so much worse than we do. So happy that we're all here and doing okay. And ultimately, I think we all wish that there was a quicker answer than Q1 of next year or whatever it would be. But it's one of those things you just have to make it through. This is a hopefully, I will knock on wood, hopefully once in a lifetime experience for all of us and for everyone out there who is listening and living in the same crazy world that we are. I know I think back to my grandmother was born in 1922, so she just missed the Spanish flu epidemic. But like her parents had lived through that, and it seems to happen once every 100 years or so. Mm-hmm. So hopefully we can all get through this. Then you can breathe deeply, just relax, and hopefully none of us ever have to see this again. And sports, like all other things around us, can begin returning to normal.
Hear, hear.
Hear, hear. Before we got off here, I just wanted to take a moment, on behalf of Michael, Melissa, and Jeff, and the whole team here, to thank everyone who reached out via social media here for your support and welcoming us back into the league. Guys like some that we've mentioned here, like Ron Valentine, Alan Corkum up in Georgetown, Kevin Dean. The folks at Milton and the Menace, their president, reached out and said, it's not goodbye, it's see you soon. Rob McDonald up in Trenton, Collinwood reached out, Tim Bates, Michelle Malvaso, Lisa Corno, everybody at OJHL Images. Can't thank the league and everyone enough for their support.
Yeah, Mike Tarantino offered some kind words too, so.
That's one of the best things about this league is how tightly knit everyone is. Even though there's a border in between us in Buffalo and all the other teams, it never feels like we're that far away. Everyone in this league is so interconnected. Everyone has always been so welcoming and so happy to help us, whether it's with team name pronunciations of players on the teams and lineups so that we can bring you the best broadcast possible, or always helping, talking, reaching out on social media. It is one of the absolute best things about this league, and I never want to take that for granted.
It's goodbye for now, but it's not farewell. Anybody got any final words?
Nothing I haven't said.
Well, on behalf of Melissa Burgess, Ryan Burgess, and Jeff Boyd, I'm Michael Mroziak. Thank you so much for tuning into the Buffalo Junior Sabres Press Box Pity Party, as we're jokingly calling it. But guys, it's a great opportunity to catch up with you guys. Let's do this chat again soon.
For sure.
Got it.
Everybody have a great night.